Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Arham Faraaz. Today I am recording a video for you to understand the define scope process in PMBOK 6th edition. What is define scope? We have covered plan scope management, then we did collect requirements, and now we are coming to define scope. Define scope helps you in laying out a boundary for the project. Okay, so define scope helps you in laying out a boundary. You're going to define a boundary. Understand this. You collected a lot of requirements, let's say 100 requirements after the discovery phase, and now the project would needs to be done in 6 months. According to your estimation, you can only do like 80 of those. Okay, the customer says just do me this 80. These are the important ones for me. So you're prioritizing the requirements, right? So your scope, defined scope, becomes a subset of collect requirements. Many times people get confused, is the scope big or the requirements big? Collect requirements is a huge list. From that you're going to define a boundary. That is your scope for the project. This boundary is very, very important and your entire team needs to know about this. Else what happens, they'll start doing a lot of things that's not part of the project. Imagine you make a feature which the customer didn't want. It's going to waste your money, your effort, your cost, and then it's going to impact the project schedule also. And customer's not happy. Okay, so the boundaries which you define for your project scope should be well understood by all the team members in the team. Great. Define scope is also known as the final project requirements. At the end of this process, you are going to get project scope statement. We'll talk about this towards the end. Okay. Project scope statement defines a list of a lot of things that will give the boundary of the project. Okay. So the final requirement of the project is nothing but the project scope. The defined scope process helps you in getting that. Now, projects may not have all the information or detailed scope in the beginning of the project. So the scope is elaborated, it's expanded gradually. See, the expansion happens gradually. This is called progressive elaboration. When scope is elaborated progressively, it is called progressive elaboration. In agile projects, as and when the sprints are happening, scopes gets more and more detailed. In a predictive life cycle, water cycle also, you may not have the 100% detail in the beginning. As when you start doing the work, you will start, maybe you have like 80% of details. You will start giving more details as and when you come closer to the work. As and when the business will give more information to the product owners, you'll get more information. Okay, so the scope is elaborated progressively. In defined scope, you should take this also into consideration. What information will you get when you're nearing that particular deliverables delivery? Okay, that's called progressive elaboration. Then, define scope is a very iterative process. Okay, this process is very, very iterative. In the sense like sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3, sprint 4, what happens? One iteration, this is what I need. Next iteration, this is what I need. Next iteration, this is what I need. So every iteration has got this scope been defined and the elaboration happens in more details. Okay, when you come to your project scope and your charter, okay, charter has a scope that's high level. For your PMP examination, if towards the end of the video, I'll talk about the topics that are covered in scope for the PMP examination. Okay, so understand the subtle differences. Charter has high level information on the scope. Your defined scope will give a project scope statement that will have like detailed. The keyword is detailed requirements. Okay, then very, very important as a project manager, and even your team should understand this. Scope has a very big impact on the cost, the schedule, the resources, and the risk of the project. Imagine the work gets more and the time is still less. If the work gets more people, more time, more budget. This has to be taken care and more risk, right? So Understand this and ensure that your team doesn't take in work as and when it comes in. It should be part of the scope. Excuse me. So there are two things you need to remember. Okay, on your PMP examination, two concepts that will be tested is what is scope creep. What is scope creep? Scope creep is you agreed for like 60 requirements and now the 61st requirement comes and says a very minor thing, can you just do it? Your developer might do it. Or then again somebody else bringing to your developer, the customer asking, okay, can you do this? He's doing this and you're not aware of this. So you're creeping into the scope. This is called scope creep. When the customer asks you to do something which is not part of the requirement and you keep doing it, it's called a scope creep. Scope creep, okay? C-R-E-E-P, creep. Then the second one, first one was scope creep. The second difference is gold plating. Gold plating is nothing but you keep doing things to the customer even if he doesn't ask. You think we want to give mobile, but again that takes time, that takes money, that takes budget, that takes schedule, right? Takes effort. Even that you should not be doing. You should be doing the scope creep as well as the gold plating. Okay, that's our understanding the scope and what is defined scope. So I'm putting a boundary. So to put the boundary, what all do I need to do? There's a lot of tools and techniques, right? Two I'll explain you over here. One is called as product analysis. You break down the product. Okay, before that, the scope, the project scope has got two parts. One is the scope has got two parts. One is the project scope, one is the product scope. Project scope is what work we will do to make the product. Product scope is the features of the product. Okay, like for example, make a car that goes at 300 miles per hour. Okay, that has got a very nice design. Okay, it's got like very good wheels and all those things, right? That's the product scope. How do you make that as your project scope? Okay, now when you are going to define the scope in detail, you should know this technique called as product analysis. You should analyze the product. Okay, what does that mean? Remember this for your PMP examination. It's important. Product analysis is important for your PMP examination. Okay, so what is product analysis? It's what like you breaking down the product. Okay, let's say for example, let's say the example of the car itself. Okay, what is the function of that particular car? Is it for speed, or is it a luxury car, or is it a dirt racing car, or is it a monster truck? What's the function? And what is the cost involved to make it? What is the usability? How can somebody use it? Then what is the purpose? As I told you, like why are you making that car? Then after that, how can it be comfortable to your customer? So you're breaking down the entire product. Then how does it look, appearance, like all these things are very important. So that's called as product analysis. You're breaking down the product. Remember this for PMP examination. Product analysis like breaking down the product. How, what, when, how much, all about the product. Then alternative analysis. Alternative analysis is like, let's say for example, to do a certain task, let's say this you couldn't get a Java developer in the market. Now, alternative analysis is can you get a C++ developer train on Java and get him to do that? I remember like we got one project which we had to do work on Scala. So not our team was like all everybody had learned Scala, right? We had all Java developers. Then we asked them to get trained. Okay, we took some time on the project and after months of training they started working on the project. That's called alternative analysis. Okay, now you do all this, you set the boundaries, everything. At the end you are coming up with the project scope statement. So project scope statement will have many things. Remember this for a PMP examination. It will have the project scope, what work you will be doing, the product scope, the features and functions of the product, deliverable. Okay, like for example, if you're doing a website, okay, what is the function of the website? How should it look? How many menu bars? How many forms? How many pages? Okay, those are all deliverables. Then acceptance criteria. How many bugs can be there? Or like for example, like what a particular user story, what is the acceptance criteria for that detailed acceptance criteria for the user stories? Like for example, this particular form should have this width only, and if you enter data, it has to go and trigger this workflow. That's the acceptance criteria, and that workflow does something else, right? Detailed information of the story. Then scope exclusions. Scope exclusion should be part of project scope statement, like what you're not doing. Like for example, when you take a project, we will not work on the old bugs. That is not part of the scope. If it's not in the SOW, we're not going to work on that. We will not do the load testing. It is not a part of the scope. Somebody else is going to do that. Right? Getting those things? Then assumptions and constraints. Assumptions can be like, okay, you are supposed to give us the environment access. Like we're working on one project in which we got the VPN access late by 1 month. The project assumption was that the customer would give us the VPN access ASAP. Since it was developed by 1 month from the customer, the project started late by a month, and they actually paid extra money for that. Those assumptions are very important. You call this out, right? Then constraints. Okay, let's say there's a budget constraint. In that budget, you can just have like 4 developers and 2 QA. You can't have the fifth developer. That's a constraint. You can't have the fifth developer, right? You don't have more money for that. Then it will detail the entire scope. How many requirements? Those 80 requirements, right? And above all, a detailed project scope statement helps you in detailed planning and helps you in controlling the project. As a project manager, it's very important you understand and know what your project scope statement is. What is not in the project? What is the project? What are the acceptance criteria? What are the missions? What are the constraints? From a PMP examination, this is very, very important. Let me just cover these things for the PMP examination. What all is tested? What all concepts can come up? Okay, as I mentioned earlier, things on scope creep, then gold plating, then what is progressive elaboration, how scope is elaborated in agile based on requirements. Okay, you can see my video on project life cycles for the scope in agile and predictive. It will give you a good idea. Then project scope statement, very important. What is a part of the project, what is not there, that's very important. You need to remember those things. Product analysis is also tested on PMP examination in many situational questions. Then difference between a product scope and the project scope, you need to remember these things. So watch this video a couple of times. Drop me a comment what you would like to see next. I'll record the next video on create workflow structure very soon and upload it. Thank you for watching my video. This is Arham Faraaz helping you pass your PMP examination. Do subscribe to my channel, leave a comment and let me know what else would you like to see. Bye bye. Have a nice day. Thank you.